Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, we're going to start this Yevamot daf Nun Tes. We are going to begin on Nun Chesem with Beis, 3 lines from the bottom, quoting the words of the Mishnah, Nis Armulu o Nis Garshu. So, the Mishnah on Nun Vavam with Beis discussed an almana, a widow who is with a Kohen Gadol, and even if it was just from the time of Erison, even though she is a daughter of a Kohen, according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir, she can no longer eat truma. However, Rabbi Lez and Rabbi Shimon said it's okay. She's allowed to eat truma even though Erison has taken place with a Kohen Gadol. Not in, of course, once they have Bia, once she's married to him, even though it's a Chavi Lavin, the Kedushin is Typhus, but Chavi Lavin, she can no longer eat truma. Was puzzled that way. And then the Mishnah said, Nis Armul Nis Garshu. Let's say she became a widow or divorced from this Kohen Gadol. Mina Nesuin Psulos. So if she became a widow from Nesuin, then certainly she's puzzled. However, the Chiddush is Mina Erison Ksheros. That if, let's say, she was only engaged, even according to Rabbi Meir, who said that she cannot eat Truma from that point on. However, if, let's say, the Kohen Gadol dies at that moment, we're going to say she goes back to her original statement, and therefore she's allowed to eat truma again, basically going back to her father's house. So in this, the Gemara says it this: B'minei Rabbi Chiya bar Yosi Mishmuel, Kohen Gadol shekidish as a katana. So you have a Kohen Gadol who does kedushin with a katana, uboger tachtav. And then she becomes a bogera, says Rashi, and all this is b'yamei erison, the Kohen Gadol also b'bogeres. So, as we're going to see in the next Mishnah, the Mishnah says that a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a bogeres, a woman who's already 12 and a half. Can I read it b'masnisen u'mitzvasu b'katana o b'naira? So the question is, he did the erison to this katana. However, she remained in the status of Erison as she became a Bogeres. So what is the din over here as we continue in Tesamanov? Mahu. Basar Nasuin Azlinan, and therefore, since he only did Nasuin once she became a Bogeres, then all of a sudden that's a problem. Oh, Basar Erison Azlinan. Do we say that no? That since he did Erison with her, therefore, says Rashi, Mishariole, he's mutter to her. Obastin as soon as Lina Mikiba the Bugris Asirole. The question is, he's not allowed to marry a Bogeres. The question is, what if he did Kedushin with a katana, and then she became a Bogeres and then he did Nisuin? The question is, or could he do Nisuin? It says in our Mishnah, Nis Armo Nis Garshu Min Hanasum Psulos Min Eresin Ksheros. So it says Beferish that if, let's say, the Kohen Gadol dies from the time of Erison, so she's able to then eat truma. Says Rashi, Alma bipsul kahuna basin asuna azlinan. Clearly, in order to say that she remains pasul forever, is only after Nesun was done. Midolo pasul manashnis armalo Kohen Gadol mace. The fact that we don't pasul this woman who's a widow, and then her husband, the Kohen Gadol, dies, and he only did Erison. So therefore, this is a raya that in fact we go busser Nesuin. As Rashi says again, Alma psul kahuna bustin Nesuin azlinan, and therefore, the deduction that we can make from here, we can deduce that the problem is that when she's a Bogeres, she cannot be a Bogeres at the time when he does Nesuin, even though he did Kedushin before. So Gemara says, so Amrulei Lishavi Chalola Lo Kimiboili Debiahi. There's, in order to make her into a Chalola, that's not a question. Debiahi, the Mishavi Li Chalola. It's considered to be a bia enough to make her into a chalola. The din is that a Kohen Gadol is supposed to marry a virgin. My kicha de kedushin be'inan or kicha de nesuin be'inan. The question is, during the time of this kicha, does it have to be while in time of kedushin or nesuin? Shamlei hanamitin nesua eras. If the Kohen Gadol did kedushin es almana v'nis mana liyos Kohen Gadol, and then this Kohen ends up being appointed as a Kohen Gadol. So what happened? It says Eres, first he was just a Kohen, and he was married to an Almana, and then became a Kohen Gadol. So in this, the Gemara says, Yichno Shani. In this situation, this is a different circumstance. Says Rashi, Yichnos Alma Basar Erison Azlina. So he said, again, we go Basar Erison. So he said, no, Yichno Shani. This situation is unique. Hasam dechsev yikach isha. Hachanamik sev isha achas v'lo ishtayim. So Mari Isa, ha'ishtenui gufa v'ho ishtani gufa. Says Rashi, Bogeres nishtani gufa min erison. When a suin, she changed her physical maturity from katana to a bogeres from the time of erison and the suin. Almana lo nishtanis. However, widow does not change her status, her physical status doesn't change. Next mission. Kohen Gadol yisal mana ben almana ben erison ben almana ben nesuin. When a woman is a widow, the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry her. Doesn't matter if her husband died having only done kedushin or nesuin. V'yisas abogeres, as we were just saying, and Rabbi Lezer, Rav Shimon machshirin bogeres. So there's a machlokus actually when it comes to a Kohen Gadol marrying a bogeres. The Gemara is going to discuss this. Well, he says mukas eitz. You're not allowed to marry a mukas eitz, and that's how she lost her besulim. Tanurabana. The pasuk says almana yikach, that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to take an almana. That's mashmi ben almana min eris and ben almana min nesuin pshito. That's a davar pashut, that's the situation. That it just says almana. It doesn't specify what type of an almana. So it doesn't matter if she's a widow, even from the time of erison. The Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry her. So manatema leif almana almana Tamar. Maybe we learn out from Tamar, who herself was an almana. Malahon min nesuin afkan min nesuin. When it came to Tamar, it has her husbands died after nesuin. So too, maybe you would think the same thing. It's only at the time of nesuin, and then the husband dies. That's when the Kohen Gadol can't marry her. Kamash Malan. Even b'shas erison, the din is the same, that a Kohen Gadol cannot marry her. Maybe it's true. Maybe we do say by erison it's okay. No. Yomi the gerusha. Ma gerusha ben min nesuin ben erison. When it comes to a gerusha, we know his gerusha is stam. And we know a Kohen Gadol and a regular Kohen also is not allowed to marry a Gerusha. And we know there's no difference. Bein min and nesuin, bein min and erison, it's not allowed. So if almana bein min erison, bein and nesuin. So if a woman had kedushin and her husband gave her a get, so then she's a Gerusha to the extent that she cannot marry a Kohen even then. So we have this machlokus whether or not a Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a bogeres. So we say that this pasuk is coming to exclude a bogeres. Says Rashi, Beis Yisera, there's an extra Beis, the Mash Mahachi Lamedrish B'makam B'suleha, Dahainu Kedarka, Im Nivula Nifsula, L'Kohen Gadol, Avol B'Bi'ila Shol Kedarka Lo, so we're going to end up seeing that there's a chiluk between Bia Kedarka, which will passel her to a Kohen Gadol, and Bia Shol Kedarka. So it says like this. That because she was a bogeres, her besulim were finished. Divra Meir. Even though she was still a basula, that she was never with a man, but because she reached a certain age, she lost her basulim. He says, no, he's allowed to marry a bogeres. So Mike, Meir, who says, no, He holds Savar Basula, feel Mixas Basula Mashma. It's Mashma, even if there's just a small amount of Basulim, is enough for him to be able to still marry her. Basuleha Adi Kol Basulim. So we learn out that no, since it says Basuleha, it means that she has to have all her Basulim. And Bogeres doesn't have all of her Basulim. Bivsuleha Bikadarka in Shul Kadarka Lo. The only time we say there's a problem, it was be a Kadarka, but not be a Shul Kadarka. So that's the sheet of Rameir. Rabbi Lezer, Rav Shimon Savri, Basula Shlema Mashma. When it says Basula, means she has to be a Basula, totally a Basula. Basula, if he'll mix us Basula, again, according to him, it's the opposite. That therefore, the extra drush is to tell you that even if she's only mixas Basulim, namely a Bogeres, at that older age, she doesn't have all of her Basulim intact. Nonetheless, that's still considered to be enough that the Kohen Gadol can marry her. V'yafil mixas Basulim. Biv Suleha, Ashiu Kol Basuleha Kayomin. All of her Basulim need to be intact. Ben Bekadarka, Ben Shalo Kadarka. Rav Yehuda Marav. Nivla Shalo Kadarka. If a person has bia with a woman, Shalo Kadarka, not in the normal way, Psula Kahuna, that bia still is enough that it will pass the kahuna, says Rashi. L'kohen Gadol. Shemitzuva al Basula. Because it's specifically not talking about a kohen, we're talking about a kohen gadol who's not allowed to be with a woman who's not a basula. Of lehedya to feel kedarka kshera, right? Well, you say no, it's not a problem. He had bia even kedarka. It says Rashi v'ein zayna ella hanivela asala. It's only a zayna if you have tashmish with someone who it's usher to have tashmish. So this person who had tashmish kedarka, she's still allowed to marry a kohen. But she's not allowed to marry a Kohen Gadol, even if it's Bia Shalo Kedarka. Fine. Amr Yehuda Marav, Nivula Shalo Kedarka Psula Kahuna. So Mesif Rava, V'lo Siel Isha. The pasuk says V'lo Siel Isha. And Rashi says, B'ma'anes Nara B'sula Ksiv. This is a person who forced upon himself against a Naira, a woman who's between 12 and 12 and a half, who has her B'sum intact. This pasuk is only talking about someone who's really mutter to you. So Echidam, says Rashi, Hach bias oines shebole kohen gadol zeh. What is the situation of the kohen gadol who's ma'anas? Ilema bekadarka ma'iri mishum almana. So why do you want to say the reason why she's puzzled to the kohen gadol is because she's an almana? Tebele mishum dehavile beula. She's a beula, and he has to have a basula. Elam shelo kedarka, mishum almana in mishum beula loy. So what do we see? That when it comes to bishul kedarka, we see that only is an issue because she was an almana, that the kohen gadol cannot be with her, but not because of the beula, the fact that she had bishul kedarka. So how could you tell me bishul kedarka the din is that the kohen gadol is puzzle, he cannot be with her? But we see it's not the case. L'chayra, we find that when it comes to bishul kedarka, in that situation, that alone l'chayra should not be an issue. It's only because she was an almana we say that she cannot be with the kohen gadol. Mashma, for this, it's not a problem. So when it says, as we continue in Nun Testament Beis, Hamani Rameir he. This sheet is like the sheeta of Rameir. And Rameir Kribbelazos. Who's Rameir? Says Rashi says, the Oimer Besula Ashu Ko Besula Kayomin. Rameir says all of her Besul must be intact, Prat Leboigeres. So Rameir holds, as we saw in our Mishnah, that when it comes to a Bogeres, the din is Lo Yisas a Bogeres. Right? You're not allowed to marry her because you have to have all of your Besul intact. So we're going to say that this is actually like the sheet of him that says that, again, it's totally on having all of your everything intact. However, V'rav Diamar Kribbelezer. Rav holds like Kribbelezer. Who's that? It says Rashi Diamar Psul Kribbelezer Diamar El Besulem Mixas Besulim LeRiboy Bogeres Yasa B'Besulem Yute Be'ula Shlo Kedarka Kidol El. So it's coming to exclude Bia Shlo Kedarka. So you're right. According to this shita, the person is not going. The issue will not be because of that she's not a basula, but because of she's an almana. So Rabbi Eliezer, my Mishim Be'ula, typically the Havigla Zaina. And she would even usher to a regular Kohen. Daham, Rabbi Eliezer, Panu Habal Panuya, Sholashim Isha Sasa Zaina. So we just mentioned Rashi, according to another Shita, that it's only when she has tashmish with someone she's usher to. But in a situation, if it's someone who's really mutter to her, technically, she's a panui, he's a panui, they're both single, but he holds you're still chayav because of Zaina. So why does he say the case is the issue is what because she's a bu'ul or not? Say pasha because she's a Zaina. So Amar Yosef Kagayin Shenivol Behema. We're talking about a situation where the bia was lebehema, with an animal. The hasim mishum be'ula ika. So in that situation, since the animal defiled her, so there is an issue of be'ula. However, mishum zayna leika, there's no din zayna when it comes to a behema, as we'll see, and later on in znusl behema. Normally abai memanamshach. I be'ula havi zayna. If the fact that she's now a be'ula, that makes her into a Zaina, so Ib'ula Havoy, so Zaina Nami Havoy, then she should be Zaina. The Zaina Havoy, B'ula Nami Havoy. Maybe it's the same thing as the case of Mukas 8, where a person loses their Basulim through literally a hit of a piece of wood. Shalok Darka, Imkin Inucha Isha Shikashil Kahuna, Shonasas Mukas 8, Alidet Sror. It's impossible because every woman potentially bled through a rock. We're talking about a case where miyun was done. In other words, we're talking about a situation of a katana. And Rashi says, we find Dahavi Bu'ula V'lo Zaina. Since we're dealing with this situation, it's an issue of Bu'ula, but not because of Zaina. V'lo Amana V'lo Gerusha. B'katana Yisaima, because we're talking about this young girl who's a widowed. Hanises Labal, that she got married to her husband, but not through the normal channel because she was an almana. She was a yasam rather, so she didn't have a father. Ubal shulkadarka, so the man had bia with her shulkadarka. Umi'anan, she does miyan. De'en kan psul znos. In that situation, there's no element of psul znos, but nonetheless, that's the distinction. So we're talking about the case of miyan. So Amar Shimi Barchia Nivla Behema Kshera. So let's stop there for 1 second. All right, let's look at question 5. Omer Rav Nivla Shulkadarka Psula Kahuna Hechem Shkachas La De Psula Mishum Dahavi Beula. How do we find that this woman is possible because she's a Beula? Veloznos Velo Almana Velo Gerusha. How is that possible? So he says again, if it's a katana, Yisayma Hanise Slabal Umianabai. So what happened? So we're talking about a case of a katana. So therefore, and he didn't have, she's not a zaina, she's not an almana, and she's not a garusha. So that is the scenario. Okay, Vaita. So the Gemara says, Amarav Shimi Rachia Nivla Behema Kshel Kahuna. If a person has tashmish literally with an animal, that then she's still going to be kosher to a kohen. Says Rashi, V'afil a kohen gadol. Why? The mukas eitz ba'almahi. This is considered to be mukas eitz. Uman de shari b'mukas eitz shari ba. So one who matters mukas eitz, that she lost her b'sum that way, will also matter by behema. Okay. Tanya nami hachi nivla lemi shenu ish. You had tashmish with an animal. Alpha bisha b'skila. Even though if there were witnesses and proper warning, then that person will get skila. Of course, in this situation, there's no witnesses or warning. She'll be kosher to a kohen. So nonetheless, the Gemara says that nivla mishenu ish alpha bisha shebeskila kshel kahuna. So you see that she is kosher. So Kiyos Rav Dimi Omer Masa Beriva Achas Behislu Shahaisa Mechabedes es abayis. She was sweeping the floor. V'rava kelev kurfri machran. There was like this dog that came after. V'hichshira Rabbi Lakuna, and Rabbi makshered her to the kohen. Says Rashi to the kohen. Says Rashi, shalo kadarka. The kadarka lo garam emukas eitz. So he mattered. Amar Shmuel v'kohen gadol. Even to a kohen gadol is mutter. Bimei Rabbi kohen gadol mihavi. 1 second. What does that mean? There was never a kohen gadol in his time. He didn't live in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. El ru'oy kohen gadol. He's fit. So Amrle Rava mi parkin l'Rav Ashi. How do we know what the Rabbanan taught us when it says Ein znus l'behema? Dechsiv lo savi esnan zayna u'macher kelev. So when it comes to znus, the payment for znus, you can't use that for a carbon. Utanan esnan kelev u'macher zayna mutarin. However, when it comes to esnan kelev u'macher zayna, then that's allowed. In other words, if a person had tashmish with a dog, says Rashi, She'im Omer Adam Luzayna, Helach Tlezeh, take this animal, Vahivli Lekalbi, and have beer with my dog. Muteris Lemizbeach, Mishari Esnan Kelev, Almalav Znusu. Obviously, it's not Znus, because otherwise we wouldn't allow it to be brought in the Mizbeach. Mutanan, Esnan Kelev, Mecher Zayna Matirin, Mutarin, Shnemer Gam Shneim, Shnayim Valerba. Tanabon. Anusas Atzmo, Amafutas Atzmo, Uyisa. So if, let's say, a person was oinus or mafata, so they're not to be married. V'im nasa nosia nusas chavera or mafutas chavera. They should marry one of the same. Lo yisa v'im not lo yisa v'im nasa Rabbi Lezer and Yankov Omer havlad cholol chom omrim havlad kosher. Okay, we're going to stop here. Let's see question 6. Nivel behema mahi l'kahuna. What's the din, again, if one is nibble to a behema? So he says, Havli mukas eitz uplugta hi. It's actually a machlokus of, based on mukas eitz. Question TA 12. Ma raya de ins nusl behema. So we learn it out from Esnan Kelev. It says that the Esnan that you give for tashmish with a dog is mutter. Dechsiv gam shneim shnayim v'lo arba. So it would only be 2 scenarios, but not the other 2 that is mentioned here. So esnan kelev mecher zayna mutarim shneim gam shneim shnayim v'lo arba. That was TA 12 on Nun Tes Amud Beis. Same question, TB 13. Let's see how he writes it. Medishari Rachmana Esnan Kelev Alma Lavs Nosu Adkan.